I'm John Kaiser at the Metals Investor Forum in Vancouver, January 17th, 2025. I am speaking with Justin Daley, CEO of VR Justin, welcome to Vancouver.
Thanks, John.
Now, Justin, I've followed VR Resources since 2017 when it went public. It was originally the Bonita copper gold project in northwestern Nevada. Then it shifted farther south to the AMZEL group, the Big Ten group of gold projects. And then last year it shifted to the new Boston copper play. And also you've been in Ontario in the James Bay lowlands chasing IOCG projects such as Roanoke, and accidentally discovered a kimberlite that's different from all the other type of kimberlite type intrusions. Unfortunately, it doesn't appear to have diamonds, and nobody cares about diamonds anymore.
They don't care, yeah.
But in September, which is also when you, who have been chief geologist or project geologist and VP exploration, became CEO of the company, VR Resources pivoted to the western part of Ontario. And it's in an area that's kind of like an exploration desert where not much has been done. What led you to focus to this area that explorationists have ignored, and why have explorationists ignored this particular area, which is somewhere between Hemlo and the 20 million ounce deposit and the 10 million ounce Hammond Reef deposit, much lower grade in the west?
It all began actually about 2 years ago at Roundup. A prospector came to our booth. We were showcasing at the Core Shack our Hecla Kilmer and the kimberlite discovery, alnoite discovery that we had made. And he brought this big chunk of rock with him that had these laces of chalcopyrite gold and silver in it, and asked me a bunch of questions about how it could be forming. His name's Byron Holbeck. He happens to live in Uppsala in this exploration desert, and he's a forestry guy. He had a logging company for about 15 years. As we all know, in the pandemic, lumber prices went through the roof. It's because the mills shut down. So he himself pivoted to prospecting. He'd had an interest in it his whole life, and he's just exploring in his backyard and driving out to the recommendations for exploration from the OGS, actually, following up on a lot of these things. And so he staked some ground. He's been working on it for the last 2 years, and now in September 2024, as I was part of a 1 to 2 year transition plan with Mike, chairman now and former CEO, I decided we needed a set of projects to work on, and I needed a new me to help as exploration manager. So I got 3 new projects, and I got Byron Holbeck on as exploration manager. He's got a lot more ideas up his sleeve as well. And so our goal now is to be a bit of a project generator in this area between Hammond Reef and Hemlo, looking in areas where people haven't traditionally been exploring for. And that's largely because there's this thin layer of glacial till covering the whole area. There was a glacial lake called Lake Agassiz that covered the area, big moraines, sandy beaches everywhere, no rocks to look at. And if you don't have rocks to look at, those historic prospectors in the 60s tend not to bring anything back to the exploration offices for major mining companies or juniors to look at. So nothing happens. No holes get drilled.
Mm-hmm. And wasn't also the academic geologists assessed the Archean rock as this Marmion tonalite, which apparently is not prospective. Was that also a discouraging factor to keep people from digging through the dirt to get to the bedrock?
Up until Hammond Reef was discovered in the early 80s off the Quetico Fault, you'd get your wrist slapped in an exploration office if you said, let's go drill some holes in the Marmion batholith, because it was just thought to be this large, barren batholith that formed 2.8 billion years ago during the amalgamation of the Superior Craton. So there was this idea that nothing's there. There are a couple small greenstone belts, but they're not as large as the ones around Dryden or in the Abitibi, or even the greenstone belts through Hemlo. So again, glacial cover, big Marmion batholith with thought to be nothing in it. Turns out there's some mafic intrusions in there. There's a gold-enriched Archean intrusion at Silverback. There's a couple interesting things going on, and you only find out if you look.
Okay, so the Silverback is now your flagship story, and you're going to be drilling sometime in January. What makes that target special?
So yeah, we plan on mobilizing the drill next week. It's still sitting up in Uppsala near Byron's house, and so we'll get it down there early next week when we're done with roundup and everything like that. We like silverback. You'd think it would be the high-grade copper, silver, and gold that we saw in that initial hand sample that Byron dug out with his excavator. But the really interesting thing for me was seeing the molybdenum on a fracture plane about 400 meters south on an interesting shear zone there. No copper, gold, or silver, but molybdenite is a strong analog for or vector for mineralization at Hemlo. And that's because it's an intrusion-related system. A lot of people think that most of the gold at Hemlo is orogenic. It is in a sense, but that gold came from an intrusion, a porphyry intrusion at depth called the Gold Strike porphyry. And it's been remobilized up into these incredibly high-grade ore zones, these chutes. So seeing that molybdenum, to me, having read some of the academic research in the region, was really encouraging. You can get copper, gold, and silver in a vein just about anywhere. When you have the moly, you're starting to tell a story. And then Byron drilled 2 holes with his own money in spring 2024, targeting base metals on a mafic dike. And he ended up hitting this clay-altered intrusion with disseminated sulfides and quartz carbonate veining, a porphyry, but 2.7 billion years old. And there's about 600 to 800 ppb gold in it. When you add those 3 pieces of evidence together, you're talking about a large area with the potential for intrusion-related copper gold in the Archean and remobilized into these high-grade zones as well.
Now Byron Holbig also did these digium surveys that are designed to to discover conductivity at shallow depths, and you had a number of anomalies in the area, but you did your own 3D DCIP survey, and you got the results finally in December, and you were very, very pleasantly surprised by what this survey showed you. What does the survey mean? All those big blobs that you have in your diagram, why has that pulled all these other bits and pieces together to make you think you've got possibly a Hemlo scale system there, or maybe as a consolation prize, a Hammond Reef type of system?
Yeah, so these large 3D DCIP surveys, really the impetus for that was the drilling that Byron did and seeing the disseminated sulfides and the gold that's associated with it. And with the amount of cover in the area, there's only really a handful of places where you see outcrop. We knew we had to do something to see to depth. This survey goes to about 500 meters depth to identify areas to follow up with drilling. We could go in there wildcat blind drilling, but we wanted something to hang our hat on. And so you never really know what you're going to get on these surveys. You just cross your fingers and hope that something is going to appear on the map. And there's a 1,000-meter long, 15 to 18 millivolts chargeability anomaly, which tells you that there should be a cloud of disseminated sulfides, potentially with gold on it, and it just happens to line up perfectly with that molybdenum I was mentioning and the high-grade copper, silver, gold. So the idea is to target a large intrusion-related, maybe low-grade, high tonnage gold system, but there's a structure running through it that might be upgrading into those high grade veins that we see at surface in the shear zone.
Now, once you start drilling into the 3rd dimension and see what the rocks actually are, is there anything you will be able to tell? Well, you obviously won't be able to tell the gold until you get the assays, but from the style of rock and mineralization that you intersect, is there any way you will be able to tell whether this might lean towards the Hemlo system, which everybody would love because 40 years ago, 20 million ounces of high grade emerged to jumpstart the Vancouver Stock Exchange out of the gutter. Hammond Reef is much lower grade, 10 million tons of lower grade. What's the difference between these types of systems, which are both possible in this setting?
Yeah, so really I see it as a spectrum, right? You're looking at really high grade on one end and lower grade on the other end. And I think what we might be looking here or hoping to see at Silverback is something in the middle. At Hammond Reef, you've got a lot of small shear zones and veins coming off of a much larger shear zone. We don't know where the gold came from in that story, but it's pretty much a classic orogenic gold system where it's coming from deep in the crust and being cycled up through these big structures. We have those same big structures at Silverback, the same Quetico fault is about the same distance south of both systems, and it's the splays that rise to the northeast that carry the gold. So we have those same stories here at Silverback, but what we also have is that intrusion as a source for gold by the looks of it in that drilling from spring 2024. And I guess what I hope to see is a combination of both. I have a porphyry background, and the way that I see porphyry systems is you get that large, low-grade envelope of material that you end up mining for 30 or 40 years in Chile and Peru or Highland Valley copper. And it's the high-grade magmatic breccias and hydrothermal breccias at the center of the system that pay off your capex early on. So that would be something for me to look forward to as we develop this system, is to see, do we have some high-grade stuff that will sort of carry the project early on in the development? And do we have a much larger low-grade envelope at depth by the sense of this chargeability anomaly? Could that be sort of the Hammond Reef, and then there's a couple of veins in the middle of it, or shear zones that carry grade that get people excited?
Now, as part of your move into Western Ontario with the help of Byron Halbeck, you also staked a property called Empire, which is within a much larger area of interest called the Empire District. The story there, it's a ultramafic magmatic intrusion with some similarities to the Lac des Îles, the platinum palladium rich deposit about 80 to 100 kilometers to the east. But it's in an area which, as you mentioned earlier, has been dismissed as not being very prospective for forming deposits. But you did a drill program in December.
Yep.
You intersected sulfides within the right type of rocks. You sent some samples for rush assays, which presumably you have already received. And whether or not this particular deposit that Byron happened to pick first to do his digium survey on, in which you upgraded with the DCIP survey, whether or not it actually turns out to be a Lac des Îles clone is not that important. What you're looking for is that there's an elevated copper platinum group metal grade in this particular magmatic intrusion that says this area is indeed fertile for this type of deposits. And these are all like magnetic anomalies that have been sat there for ages from government surveys. What did the rush assays tell you to do? Walk away or start treating this seriously? Where does this story stand right now?
So right now, basically we know that it's fertile. We've seen that these intrusions based on that sample on the side of the highway, which is the only reason why we got into Westwood in the first place, is seeing copper, gold, and PGEs in that rock on the side of the highway and saying to ourselves, what is this magnetic anomaly stretching off into this lake to the north? We've got 6 more targets staked now. It looks like most of these magnetic anomalies with palladium around them could be good targets for this sort of Lac des Îles style system. And just yesterday, we mobilized a borehole EM survey. They're probably running that right now, reading down hole 1 and hole 2 to give us an idea, is there anywhere either off hole or near hole that might be a conductor for reef style mineralization? Because in these systems, you're looking for areas where the magma is separated into a sulfide-rich melt and a silicate-rich melt. And that's exactly what you're seeing in those rocks. We've got one on our booth just outside. And in most of the news releases, you see the sulfide starting to separate from the mafic material. And that's exactly what you want to see at Lac des Îles, and we're seeing it now. So if there's a conductor somewhere off-hole, we're going to follow that up with some ice drilling in late February after the silverback drilling, just to see what it is. And then, of course, we've got a whole district of opportunities, this new MAC target that we've staked or just the other day and announced.
Oh, so you have started staking?
Yeah, we're staking the obvious stuff that,
okay.
There's a whole bunch of intrusions out there. This is an area where, again, there's not a lot of exploration has occurred. So the government didn't even spend a lot of money on magnetic surveys. So we're working with countrywide half-mile spacing data. You can see big intrusions, and generally you want a big intrusion to have the chance to generate enough segregated sulfide to have an interesting ore deposit. But very coarse data. So we're looking through this coarse data, running our sort of AI machine learning algorithms through it to sort of try and clean that old data, and then looking at the OGS lake sediment data staking the obvious stuff that we see right now and have had our eye on for a while. But we're going to have to follow up and drill some of these to know for sure. This new MAC target, though, has the highest palladium, way higher than Westwood, about 60 ppb palladium and 100 ppb copper sitting on top of it. So if that's any indication what might be going on in that system, we're excited. And there's a road right to it. That's the fun thing about this area. Lots of forestry, lots of logging, very little mineral exploration.
One final question. Your projects in Nevada, right now, you're not doing anything with them because we are still in a resource junior bear market. But with a new administration taking charge, there is a chance that the U.S. Forest Service and BLM will be told, we need more exploration to find deposits. You need to back off from your health insurance company style deny and delay strategy with regard to permitting, which is critical to the juniors because the juniors need to be able to get permits quickly. They know how to reclaim them properly. But these endless delays getting a permit. Now, suppose we start emerging from this bear market and there is a sea change in attitude from obstructing to actually facilitating things to be done properly. Which of the three projects, Bonita, New Boston, and the Gold Amsel Big 10 whatever group, which ones would you return to first, or in what priority, which if money was suddenly flooding in from the sky, which one of these would you tackle?
First up would be Bonita because even in the last 7 years since we went public in 2017, I guess 8 years now, I was a much younger geologist then. I've learned a lot since then, but the technology advances in that time are staggering as well. So this 3D DCIP survey, which is state of the art now, that we've run on basically every project in the last 4 years, is something that we'd go and do at Bonita right away. And it's pretty cost-effective exploration, and follow that up with drilling. That's an easy target in my mind because it's just data that was not available even 7 years ago. And when you think about advances that have been made since the exploration at Hemlo or Hammond Reef in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, it's that type of shift in technology that allows you to explore more quickly, make more cost-effective decisions, and hopefully make a discovery sooner and faster. So Bonita first, because I know exactly what I would do with new technologies to relocate a drill hole and drill right into Copper Queen. Amsel, if you're talking about rapidly expedited permitting in the Forest Service, that's a very easy one to go back to. Sit right back on top of that hill where we drilled, I think it was 2021, if memory serves properly, and drill to the south. There was a small chargeability anomaly on the north side of the hill, and there's a much, much bigger chargeability anomaly on the south side of the hill that just isn't tested. So I'd want to get back there and do that. And of course, New Boston is a huge system. We drilled 2 long holes into it. We learned a lot. It was expensive drilling, but with some money in the kitty, you could get a lot more work done. And there's a very, very large system, very powerful system there that remains more or less untested in the center. So lots to follow.
Lots of things for you guys to do, and you're part of this new breed of company that it stays on top of all the new technologies for gathering data, also new theories for evaluating the geochemistry of alternation systems. So you're part of this, that we're going to be the survivors in an over-cluttered field of what too many companies that really aren't staying on top of all this stuff. I've been speaking with Justin Daley, CEO of VR Resources at the Metals Investor Forum in Vancouver. Thank you, Justin.
Thanks, John.